Another week, another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. Myself, Craig and Charlie are back again, as I'm guessing we're going to be a few times in the next couple of weeks, to talk about another manager who has left his post in the Championship. So we are talking about Sheffield Wednesday, of course, who late last night, as we're recording this, dismissed Garry Monk after 14 months in charge. And let's be fair, the thing that came out in the statement was that it felt like the right timing, according to the owner. Now, that's the thing I'm going to start with by coming over to Charlie Betts. I'm going to start with you because although the timing generally is good, Craig's talked a lot about poor form in our weekly Championship predictions and things like that. It was possibly the best week leading up to that Sheffield Wednesday had in about 9 months. They ended that hoodoo at home. They got the win at last. They picked up another point against last season's playoff team at the weekend. And they got their points deduction halved. So your initial reaction first, but then also, do you think the timing was good?
It's a good question, that, to be honest, because I think to be honest, I don't think it was. I don't blame the club for getting rid of him. One good week, all right, they had the halving of the points deduction, and that might paper over the cracks a little bit. But to be brutally honest, I don't think it's anything that is a surprise to anyone because it didn't look like it was turning. If I'm honest, the squad that he's got, that he's assembled. He's got like a win percentage of 30% there, which I know they've had problems this part of the season, but last year they didn't. They didn't have the financial problems then necessarily, and I know I've been looming over them, but didn't have points deductions then. So you're going to sit mid-table with Garry Monk. You look at all the other clubs he's been at, Middlesbrough. Okay, he did okay at Swansea, but still, it's just mid-table mediocrity. And I think as a club like Sheffield Wednesday, and maybe because we grew up in the 90s, being a bit nostalgic, they deserve to be better than just mid-table mediocrity. So for me, I think it is the right time to get rid of him. It's who they're replacing with that's the big issue, which obviously you're probably going to move on to later.
Yeah, we'll come back to that a bit later on. But Craig, let me get your initial reaction before we move on as well. I'm guessing from the weekly predictions and your comments about Sheffield Wednesday's form, you're probably not that surprised.
I kind of am, to be honest, because as you said, alluded to earlier, last 2 games, 4 points out of 6. With the extra 6 points they got back, I think, okay, maybe there's something there. But you got it before that. The records, as Charles said, before the win against Bournemouth, 4 straight defeats against teams that should probably around that area in the table. Didn't look like they were playing well, had no confidence, no win at home since February. The football wasn't great, and really, obviously past the Luton game, the fans weren't happy from that. They didn't play well. The 2 games I've really seen them, obviously against Luton, they've been really poor. So the style of football from Garry Monk was stale. But as I said, they made good, as Charlie said, they made good signings. Yeah. Very good signings. Izzy Brown, Jack Marriott, Shea Dunkley, very good players. So to see that not working to start with is very worrying.
Can I just jump in there really quickly about Garry Monk? I'm not in a weird way, but I'm sort of surprised he got the job. He's been at some big clubs, Leeds, Birmingham, obviously Sheffield Wednesday. These aren't like your I don't know. And what I mean is these are big institutions. I'm just surprised he keeps getting these jobs because actually he's not really, you don't want me saying this, and maybe I'm speaking slightly out of turn, he's not really done much anywhere. Middlesbrough flattered to deceive there as well. So I'm just surprised he keeps getting these big moves. So it'd be interesting to see what happens to him next. But
well, no, he did do well at Birmingham, but then he got harshly sacked.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay. 1 out of 5, but still, do you know what I mean? What I mean, like the Derby job, I'm sure he'll be linked with that straight away. And yeah, I don't really understand why. I don't know what he brings. He doesn't. But anyway, that's probably another episode for another time.
Well, Charlie's predicted our next Championship managerial special there already.
He hasn't been sacked yet.
He hasn't been sacked yet. But it looks like Charlie's coming out with a bold statement today, which is not normally the case out of the 3 of us. But Craig, I'm going to come back to you again here because the thing that we've both just mentioned there is fans' thoughts and reactions. And you mentioned that reactions to the poor performance against Luton, which we would have seen. It was very heavily in favour of they're glad that he's finally gone in terms of the reaction to the statement. So do you agree with that? Can you understand that from a fan point of view? Because they haven't been scoring goals at home either as well, which I know the fans aren't in at the moment, but it's not a great thing for the fans. It's not an entertaining style to watch, is it, at times?
No, I think as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, you can be highly frustrated. Even if your team's at home, Luton past lockdown were absolutely terrible at home, for example. And that's when they needed fans in. But Sheffield, it's very weird for a team like that to have an abysmal home record, to not win a game for a good 9-10 months. It's very poor. They weren't great in 2020. Let's be honest. And yeah, I said they're not scoring goals, even though they brought in a very good Championship striker, as we all know. We've seen Jack Marriott in the past, a very good creative player, Neely Brown. who we've also seen in the past. Shea Dunkley, he was brilliant at Wigan, Shea Dunkley,
Yeah.
last season, the season before. So there's stability there. There's there. They've released a lot of players in the summer as well. Just looking at that, they've released about 20 players. So he's cleared a lot of deadwood. But has he done enough? Clearly not. Whoever the new manager comes in, it'd be a totally different style of football. And I can't agree with the owner saying that there needs to be a change. Obviously, he's got 2 weeks now to change it. Probably we'll predict in a minute who should be the next Sheffield Wednesday manager.
It sounds like I'm getting on the Garry Monk sort of
Negativity.
bashing brigade. Yeah, no, but I suppose if go with me, I listen to another podcast that looks at autobiographies, but one of them is Garry Monk, and Garry Monk, he comes across as a very principled person. So as much as the club are getting rid of him, you know, what I'm saying is I don't know if it's completely one way. I would imagine that Garry Monk maybe has a certain way of wanting to do things, a certain principle. And if that didn't necessarily meet, I don't know if this is being as much him maybe being a bit stubborn. He comes across like that when, you know, his time at Swansea and stuff in the book. So I'm only going by a book. I'm just using it as an example. But I don't know if it's as bad as, oh, poor Garry Monk, he had a good week, but now they've binned him off. I think he could be just as outspoken as probably the club could be, you know, if you know what I'm saying. So, I mean, going back to your point about Birmingham as well, Craig, he lost more than he won there. So I agree with what you're saying. I suppose the point I'm making is I think he flatters to deceive, and I think he's been found out probably again at another club. I'll be amazed if another big club touches him, but you never know. There's enough of them around that will probably be seeking managers come January time. So
let's move to Sheffield Wednesday's future, because obviously, as we mentioned, it was a good week off the pitch for them. As Craig mentioned, they had been backed in the summer. They had brought in a lot of good players and have a good championship squad still. So I'm going to take you through the names that have popped up over the last couple of days, or the last day or so, for various reasons. So immediately after the sacking, Paul Cook was the favourite. He was straight in there, and the fans seemed very happy with that. He is no doubt in a good championship manager. He basically, without points deductions, led Wigan to mid-table last year. So no one can argue with that. Then suddenly today, Tony Pulis has become odds-on favourite, and the reaction to that has not been quite so pleasant. Also up there, we've got Nigel Pearson, Ryan Lowe, Eddie Howe, who I don't think realistically will go there, or Danny Cowley. And in Sky Sports News have been throwing the ringer with the likes of Sol Campbell and Phil Neville, who have now both been mentioned as well. So I guess the start to the question is very simple, and I'll let Charlie go first this time, as I asked Craig last. Who do you think is most likely realistically to take over at Sheffield Wednesday, and who would you like to see?
I'll go opposite on that. If I'm honest, Dan, I think the numbers, you know, maybe the championship predictions and the Moneyball thing, the numbers probably suggest Paul Cook is the best choice. You know, statistically, win percentage wise, he's the best of the favourites. There's probably, you know, ones further down the list, but of the ones who look likely to get the job, he would be the one who would go on the numbers. He should, but obviously, where are they going to do that? I don't know. I think they'll go for another sort of a manager who's been around that merry-go-round, a Pulis or a Pearson. I think it'll be one of those two, if I'm being brutally honest. I'd love to see them give it to Paul Cook. I think he's a better fit for them. I think he's a better long-term appointment. The impression you get is if Wigan hadn't had the issues they had last year, he'd have still been there. You know, obviously he left for obvious reasons, but, you know, as great as it is Tony Pulis and all of this, he does get through a lot of clubs, as does Nigel Pearson, who can come across as quite an abrasive character. I don't know if Sheffield Wednesday need that right now. So who do I think they'll go for? I think, sadly, they'll probably plump for the name and go for Pearson or a Pulis. But I think their best bet, and probably the one who I reckon could do the best there, is Paul Cook. But, you know, they might surprise us yet. But that's the way I see it anyway.
Same question for you, Craig?
It's near enough spot on with Charlie's prediction, to be honest, because
You're agreeing. You're agreeing.
Yeah, I know. Hear me out. There's two theories. There's two theories to this. For any other team in the Championship, I would say, why not give it to someone new? Because Huddersfield, obviously, last season, they weren't Danny Cowley, obviously kept him up. For Sheffield Wednesday's situation, I would easily go for someone who's got experience, a lot of experience. So, yeah, a Pulis or a Pearson is probably the two perfect choices. Paul Cook, I do agree on Paul Cook in a way, because he was brilliant last season. He was brilliant a few seasons before that, even with Portsmouth, took him up there. I think any other team, Phil never gets a shout. As much as I know he's got the England women's job at the moment, even though he's going next year. Yeah. Any other club, I'll probably say, yeah, he might give it to Phil Neville and a Sol Campbell. But as in that situation, you've got to go for experience. So Pulis or Pearson, yeah, is the two easy choices. The style of football, on the other hand, will be a lot worse. So what do you want? Play crap football and get survival, or play good football but go down?
Well, hopefully, Paul Cook, you get both, don't you? Anyway, you get to play good football and stay up. But the only other one on the outside was Lee Johnson, wasn't it? He's obviously available, but again, I don't know. I don't think that would.
Maybe I think Lee Johnson needs a break from football, to be honest. No, not disrespect to Lee Johnson, but he's obviously been professional for so long. I think you might need that bit of break and recharge.
So I've got to ask you a follow-up question to this. You've said who you think might end up in charge or who you'd like to see in charge. What I've got to ask you two is what you think will happen for the rest of the season with Sheffield Wednesday. Because, of course, I didn't have them in my relegation battle, but you two both mentioned them. And, Craig, you definitely had them to go down, didn't you? So what I'd like to know, and I'll come to you first so Charlie can lift the spirit afterwards, is what do you think will happen? Do you stick by your decision or will Sheffield Wednesday now survive?
Do you know what? If they still had those 6 points gone, I would probably say it'd be tight with a Pulis or Pearson there. No, I don't think they'll go down, to be honest. But obviously, the goal for back points is there's teams that we already seen this season. Obviously, we do the predictions every week. We know Derby are pretty poor at the moment. Wickham, obviously, new club into the league, so that obviously they're finding it tough. Rotherham, Forest obviously struggling as well, but they've just changed the manager. I think they'll survive but if they're the 6 more points gone, I probably would say they'll go down.
What about you, Charlie?
I agree with Craig on the points thing. Is definitely ease the burden on them a bit. Do you know the way I view this? Whoever they get in next is crucial, I think. And the reason I say that is I think they'll stay up, whoever they get in. I think they've probably got good enough players. If they get in a short-term fix of a Pearson or a Pulis, you're going to end up paying a lot of money to probably players who you're not going to get a lot of money back from. What I mean is to sell on value and that kind of thing. But it'll be enough to keep them up. But then I reckon they'll have the same problem the following year. I think they'll be down there again, because of the model of, putting out fires and quickly, right, let's just solve this. We'll get in a high-paid centre-half from a Premier League club. And, do you know what I'm getting at? That kind of financial thing. I think if you go for a Paul Cook, I think you've got a longer-term investment and they might not be as clear of maybe relegation this season. But longer-term, the following year, I think he could build a good squad. So it depends who they get. I think they'll be safe. I think if they go for a big name, they'll probably be higher up the table, but longer-term, they'll suffer. I think if they want to take a risk and go with someone like a Paul Cook, I think he'll keep them up. I think it'll be a lot tighter than probably what it would be under a Pulis. I think longer term, then you give him another summer, then you'll start to see the fruition of that.
I won't be unfair to you boys. I've got to be honest and give you my opinion as well. So I think it will be Paul Cook who takes over. I think he'd be the best appointment. I saw Carlos Carvajal sort of half throwing his hat
Bring him back.
to take over again.
Bring him back.
The fans weren't that against it, to be fair, but I think it will be Paul Cook, and he seems the favourite with the fans. And the only thing that worries me is that Tony Pulis is odds on, which doesn't seem like a long-term fix, as Charlie mentioned. But in terms of Sheffield Wednesday, I still think they'll be safe. Obviously, the 6 extra points helps. So that's it. An initial reaction to Sheffield Wednesday sacking Garry Monk, talking through the men who are tipped to get the role. And our next episode relating to Sheffield Wednesday will probably be which one has got the role, unless it's someone left field. So Sheffield Wednesday giving us a 2-part special. But if you did enjoy the first part, please do put a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe down below for regular content from the podcast. If you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, do you agree with the loud majority on social media? Are you happy to see Garry Monk out? And who do you think from the list of names, who would you like to see in charge next? You can follow us over on Twitter at HonestFootball3. And if we don't have an appointment in the meantime, we'll be back next week for our championship predictions after the international break. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.